I'll ask you some deep theory questions. So when you're modulating to the,
Oh yeah. Is that just no hard math or science
Yeah,
questions? All right, I think we're rolling. All right. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, As I always say on my part, no extra charge for mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
This guy sounds great. Hey guys, this is my buddy. You've seen him on YouTube and Instagram, and all his stuff's blowing up big time. Killer guitar player, lives in my neighborhood over here in East Nashville. This is Jack Roosh.
Hey, everybody. Cool.
Yeah, man, one of my favorites in Nashville here, which if you're a really great guitar player in Nashville, that puts you in the higher percentile of probably some of the best guitar players on the planet.
Yeah, I would say so. It's tough competition.
I love this guy's playing, man. Obviously, he knows a lot of guitar, and it just super tasty. Always has great tone, great note choice. Loves all the great guys. I was picking his brain earlier about a lot of this really cool stuff he's doing, navigating through the blues and adding some jazz to your blues and all that. Me and him are kind of coming from the same place where we love that music and adding a few of those little ear benders to that stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was asking him about, just simply going from a 1 chord to the 4 chord in the blues and how I've got a couple little tricks of going from, like, if I'm going from A to D and I go, I know that you can go, and just those little things. And I see that because I can see that that's like this to this, or, this to that. When you see the mechanics of where that's coming from, then this lick makes more sense because it's really just the 4 chord up a half step and going back down.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that. If you want to, I'm stuck with just that lick because I know it and memorize it. But he's got the goods behind it. So give him a little.
Well, seeing the chord is still the most important thing.
Right.
Seeing the chords, that's all. It's all connected to that. But there's a scale that fits over that chord.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like an A altered chord. If you played this with A in the bass, it's like the bass player would be playing
right.
that. You've got all these notes, like that's the flat 5th, that's the flat 7th, that's the 3rd. There's the sharp 5th or the flat 13, whatever you want, and then you've got the flat 9, the sharp 9. So those are all notes that are found in this A altered scale.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just the root, flat 9, sharp 9, the 3rd, the flat 5th, the sharp 5th, and the flat 7th. So it's got the core notes of like a dominant chord, the root, 3rd, and flat 7th.
Right.
And then all of these other altered notes that you can choose to kind of throw in there to add flavor, and they all build tension. It only works if you're moving, if you're resolving. It doesn't work really if you're just playing over like a static 1 chord vamp.
Yeah, and that's kind of why to throw in just a little. That's why I think we love guys like Robin Ford, who also lives over here a couple blocks away. We're lucky to have him in the neighborhood too. But those guys we love because they'll throw these little ear benders in on a chord change of the movement.
Yeah.
To resolve it and take your ear there, but then they're right back to the blues.
Yeah.
And that to me, I think, is the key. If we've all heard these guys that know so much theory that they're using it everywhere, and it's way more special if you just put that little thing in there to take you from the 1 to the 4 chord or from the 5 chord back to the 1 or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't work unless you can land it, unless you can like stick the landing, and for that you got to know the chord tones. You got to know like all the notes of the D7 chord where you're going.
Yeah.
Because all this, that sounds weird unless you can, get to chord tones.
Give me a little example just on like a slow blues. I'll play like just a little slow blues today. So I'll go like 1. Let's go from the 5 to the 4, and then we'll do it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. so tasty, man. I mean,
yeah. Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that altered thing, when you look at the chords, the relationships between the chords is key, and that's like, that comes from the jazz thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at like the chord changes to jazz standards, you have to kind of break it into these little pieces, like a 2-5-1, and then that moves to this, which is a different 2-5-1. There's these little chord movements within the full progression.
Yeah.
So understanding that, so like,
and really breaking that down to where you can see the before it becomes overwhelming, and you're seeing these big 13 chords and the alter. What I've seen too is just playing a 1/6, and I know we're getting kind of into the jazz world, and we're going to come back in a minute, but even just playing a 1/6-2-5.
Yeah.
If you look at the inner windings of that, it's just this tritone is going chromatically. Watch. If the bass was going, we would just go.
Yeah.
So that's what's moving. It's moving chromatically. So even in the blues, playing from the 1 chord to the 4 chord to the 5 chord, if you just look at, and this what's the word? Transfers over into country, funk, rock and roll.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. This is just playing over the changes. But even if you're playing 3 chords, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at like, okay, if that tritone is just moving down a half step, the major third of A and the flat 7 of A down a half step becomes the flat 7 of the D and the major third of the D. Then I'm going up to the 5, then that's the flat 7 of the 5, and that's the major third of the 5, because we're looking at this chord, and then we're back to this chord. So I'm looking at, if I'm playing even a country song and I go A, walk down to the flat 7 to pull my ear to the major third of that 4 chord. It's all about seeing these really small little parts of how these chords are you're hearing the chord change before you're playing anything over top of it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so you have to see these little relationships of these chords, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the tension that's pulling your ear to where you're going, right?
Well, yeah, and like that kind of thing when you're going from A to A7, which that's in a million songs, country, a million country
just
songs.
Music.
It's not just blues, but
right.
But yeah, going from A, that A7 is pulling. It wants to
You
go
wanna
to
go.
D7. Yeah, it wants to go to D.
Yeah.
And that's because that dominant chord is like, it's a dominant chord for a reason. It's functioning to harmonically to pull you to D.
And what makes a dominant chord? It's a major chord
With a flat 7.
But it's with a flat 7.
Yeah, flat 7.
Dominant chord, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why you can't use the major pentatonic or the minor pentatonic by itself over that chord, because you're getting parts of the minor pentatonic and the major pentatonic together, right?
I mean, you certainly can play minor pentatonic over a dominant chord.
Don't tell
a million blues guys. I mean, don't tell
Albert
Albert King. He does. But,
no, just kidding.
But it's I mean, you got to understand
if
you're bending the rules there a little bit by playing like a minor third.
You're bending the rules up to up
so,
to the major third.
And that's cool, but it's
right.
it's cool to it's also cool to understand why that works or maybe doesn't work.
Right.
Which you can do with your ear too. You can hear that stuff.
And that's where the blues becomes a little interesting, because if you do just go, if you're playing over an A7 and you do just go, that's a very stark major third, but if you go, well, there's a world that lives in between this, and that's kind of where the blues comes in, because it's not a stark major third or minor third, but you're kind of going, like, even if I played a minor pentatonic all the way down over the A7, if I went, and at the very end I'm putting the major third on, but I would never play it like this. I would go. So even that minor third, you're pulling it towards the direction of the major third. You're just not. You're just adding some flavor to it.
Yeah, that's the blues. I mean, that's the character, because like, I mean, not to get too much into theory and harmony, but there's not, like, before the blues, there wasn't songs that were in a dominant key. Like classical music would never be like the key center is A dominant 7. Dominant chords were only for like moving places.
Right.
So the blues is really the first time where you have like, no, we're just in the key of A7. We're playing in a dominant key. So the rules are kind of out the door at that point. It's like, well, whatever sounds good, whatever feels good.
Speaking of that, just to get into something a little different while I got you here, because we don't get to, we see each other at the coffee shop every morning and go, hey man, let's hang out. And then finally last night I texted him at like 10 o'clock. I said, hey man, what's your schedule look like? He goes, well, how about tomorrow at noon? I said, that's perfect. So here we are. So get away from the theory just for a little bit, but what do you think is the most important part of making music in general, and what do you get out of making music? You know, do you think it's listening?
Well, definitely listening is always a huge part. I mean, as far as like becoming a proficient musician, or anything, just getting better, listening is the number one first step. If you want to learn a style of music, get a few really good records in that style and just listen to them to death. And I'm big on like listen to one record for a while. You know, if you're trying to like right now, I'm way in a Wes Montgomery phase, so I just listen to like the same 2 or 3 Wes records. Every day, every night, like when I'm going to bed, I put them on.
What records are those? Tell the guys what records those are.
I love Boss Guitar, and then man, I'm terrible with names. Smoking at the Half Note.
That's my favorite.
And then the other one, I can't remember.
When you think of it, I'm a huge Wes Montgomery fan. And if you listen to that music, it's easy to get overwhelmed because he's so incredible. But if you can just steal a couple little things from
him, at the beginning, it's not even about that. It's like, if it's overwhelming, just listen to it.
Keep listening.
You don't have to like. At first, you could just put it on and just see if anything stands out to you. You know. But if you start getting into the entire catalog, it's gonna be like, oh, I got to listen to Wes, so let me just pull up Spotify and listen to a million things. It gets overwhelming. Listen to one song over and over again.
And you don't sit around listening. You don't sit around listening or learning music that you don't enjoy, do you?
No. You'd have to pay pretty well for that
because somebody told you you need to. You know. And
no. I don't do any of that. Whatever speaks to you, and some stuff takes time. You know, when as a kid first started hearing jazz stuff, it wasn't really for me at that time. I was into blues, and then slowly it crept in, and I got more into it. And there's still stuff I listen to today, and I don't get it, or it's way over my head. And maybe 5 years down the line, that'll be the thing I'm into.
Did you grow up playing any classic rock music or rock and roll or anything?
My parents were into that stuff.
Were they musicians?
No. My mom plays a little bit, but they grew up in the 60s and had all the classic. Oh yeah. But it was Beatles, Neil Young, CCR, all of that. Classic stuff.
Good stuff.
And then I kind of found the blues on my own when I got into playing guitar, because I liked Hendrix, I liked some of the rock guys, and then I heard I think I was probably 11. I heard Freddie King and I heard Albert Collins, and that was it.
That's
like,
awesome.
Okay, that's the path.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of like me. I mean, you guys know, when I do these YouTube videos and stuff in my house here with the little amp, I don't ever play the guitar that loud at my house anymore, or use overdrive pedals or anything. Every once in a while I'll plug something in and go, hey, let's mess around a little bit. But you're like me, man. You gravitate towards, since we do love these guys like Wes and Joe Pass, and you're hearing these super amazing tone and clarity and execution. You're kind of like, I think we're kind of the same, where you plug in, you go to the front pickup, and you get a nice fat warm tone.
I never go to this pickup at home. That's strictly on the gig.
Only on the gig we go to the back pickup. I know it. It's so funny. And then, tell us where you're from, Jack.
I'm from Frederick, Maryland.
That's right, Maryland. Yeah. Very cool. Well, man, this is really good. You know, I think that, man, that the more I think about this and try to figure out ways to help, you know, other people kind of, you know, shave years off of the journey or whatever, you know, there are no shortcuts. The shortcuts are having this thing in your hand for hours and hours and hours in your life before you get too busy to not be able to do it, you know?
The best, like you said, with listening, but I think if you're going to practice guitar, I think one of the best things you can do is put on an album and try to figure out what they're doing.
I think so too.
Ear. That still so many of the things that I use every day that I play, I can directly go, yeah, I stole that from that solo or that record.
Right.
Or I took that idea and I kind of like messed with it and made it into something else.
Yeah.
But you know, it's all there on the records. Listen to B.B. King or Grant Green or any of these guys, anybody you like. It's all there.
I couldn't agree with that more. Yeah. And I say that so much that I kind of feel guilty. It's like telling people to learn their chord shapes. I say it so much because I see it every day. The guys that are taking lessons and the guys that I'm doing Artist Works video exchanges with and guys I'm seeing on gigs and stuff, and I can tell immediately what they haven't put the time into. And it's for me, it's less, I need to go back and learn what you know as far as these altered scales and stuff like that. That's the homework I need to do. But what I will say is even before you get to the level that he's on, where you know you're hearing some really complex harmonic content that's to me super beautiful over these changes, it's because we have such a great foundation of just the 3-chord blues change that you start hearing these other substitutions in other directions because you've got that foundation so ingrained. It literally is, you cannot run before you can walk. You have to be able to play a 3-chord blues shuffle before you can start adding in anything altered, or your ear's not gonna accept it, you know? And so learning the cage system and just learning how to outline a 1-3-5. If somebody plays this, I'm gonna go. Well, right there, you've played what essentially would be like a bass line because they're playing the chord tones of that chord. But I would much rather hear somebody play this and know what the chord is very simply, rather than just like, you know, there's no chord change there. That's an A pentatonic that has no content or information of any other chords changing. Yeah. And so to me, it's just, man, keep going back to the fundamentals. Even a great sports coach is instilling fundamentals all the time, because that's what all this stuff is built on, is a really strong understanding of the fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, and like he said, man, I can't stress enough. I think people, I was going to say a second ago, and you can, you know, see if you agree, but I think when you're learning to put on a record and try to jump in and learn stuff off that, I think a lot of guys get overwhelmed.
Yeah,
really
well,
easy.
I mean,
so
everybody does. I get overwhelmed.
We get overwhelmed, you know? And luckily there's a start and a stop button on there. And with us too, you can stop us anytime you want and come back tomorrow and check more of this out if you want to. And I'm kidding, but so, like, you know, if you put on a record, so it's all about biting off portions that you can handle, right? Yeah.
So and I don't feel like there's any cop outs. Like, slow it down if you need to slow it down.
Whatever you have to do.
If watching like a lesson or a tutorial on YouTube or something helps,
right?
Whatever is going to help you, you know, get the notes under your fingers. Yeah.
And I would say too, you know, I know a couple buddies of mine that we've been on road trips together and stuff, and they're guitar players, weekend guys and stuff like that, and not professionals and stuff, and they'll put on recordings that they want me to hear and stuff like that, and I just wanted to say that, you know, it's really important to seek out the highest quality recordings of this stuff too. Like, don't listen to anything that's like a raunchy live recording where people are out of tune, or like some bad southern rock band where it's really out of tune and just a bad recording. try to seek out like really good recordings. Try to find the best, if you can, maybe even the most current modern recordings where you can really hear the bass and the keyboard and the voicings and the you want to be able to dissect these recordings in a way that allows you to improve your ear. And so to me, I would say seek out the highest quality recordings you can, and because that's a bad habit that you're gonna,
The thing, well, not to cut you off, but the thing I would say about transcribing, a lot of people think they've got to learn the whole solo.
Right.
That's not really. I never learned whole solos.
Yeah. Especially off West Montgomery.
That's crazy. What I'll do first is figure out what the chord changes are.
Right.
What's the bass player doing? What's the keyboard or the rhythm guitar? What's the basic changes?
Because you got to hear it.
A lot of times, if you're, a lot of times, like stuff I'll transcribe, it's a blues.
Right.
It might be like a blues we were playing with some more changes in it. But so I'll kind of know like the outline. Okay, that's the 6-2-5-1 section. So then once I've got that sussed out, I'll go, okay, that's a cool lick right there, and I'll just figure that lick out. And maybe if it's a fast up-tempo jazz thing, I'll slow it down, and then I'll go, okay, well, how can I use? Because I'm not playing a lot of bebop gigs,
right?
But I do play a lot of blues gigs, so maybe I can take that and use it over like a slower shuffle or slow blues. So I take that idea and mess with it a little bit, try it over different groups, change it around in keys.
Yeah.
If it's in F or B flat, which a lot of jazz tunes are, maybe I'll move it to E or A or something that I'm going to play on a gig.
Totally.
And then that's one little thing. That little it could take you, a couple hours maybe, depending on where you are. Or when I was younger, it might take me multiple days. I would listen to something, I'd hit a wall, and I'd come back to it a few days later. But that's how you build vocabulary, and and then you can look at that stuff and you can break it down. And you can go, oh, okay, he's playing out of that chord right there. And so that's how you slowly start to build vocabulary.
Yeah, and some of these some of these 5 shapes that you're looking at, eventually you want to be able to connect this stuff, horizontally, but then vertically is a must too, because you want to be able to kind of play your full vocabulary in each one of these 5 positions, because it's all going to repeat. So if you learn this, you'll try to learn that. If it's that little line or that melody, try to learn it in as many different places as you can.
Yeah,
that's another thing. Just try to maybe stick to, instead of trying to connect the whole guitar at one time, just stick to like one of these 5 shapes. And what I was going to say is, some of those are going to lay out better than others. There's a couple, I don't play out of the D shape a whole lot, but we will. But like I'm, more out of like the C shape reoccurs. The G shape is a lot of great guitar stuff in that. The D shape is very, of course, it's very usable, and there's a lot of cool stuff around there. But it's probably the one that people use the least that are learning, right? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. But
I love it. I like this shape because it sounds really good.
Yeah, I mean, you want to get to a level where you're kind of proficient with everything. But the other thing, and I know you've talked about this before, but just learning your little triad groupings too is huge. If you're playing, seeing these little, those little groupings everywhere. Totally. Because that's, and then seeing them in position too.
Exactly.
That's another huge thing. That's something that I don't think I grasped practicing that when I was younger. When somebody showed that to me, it seemed like, okay, I just sit here and I just move this around. What do I do with that? Once I started putting it in the context of chord progressions and really practicing, like moving through chords with it, all of a sudden I'd be on a gig and I'd be playing it, maybe some improvising or something, and I would like see it on it like clicked one day, and it was like, oh, okay, there's those triads right there. Yeah. That's the next chord. It's right there. There's some notes out of it. And then, so it's a really good visualization tool.
That's great. I love the triad. I've been talking more about that too, and I think I've done a little bit of this, but I'll show you that, and I think this is a pretty good exercise. If you have like, And I think what you said too about learning them in groups all the way up, but don't, like he said, don't get, stuck just knowing them all the way up in a pattern. Try to break out of the patterns. If you see yourself getting kind of comfortable with something, stop and go, okay, now I want to learn them, and just learn them in that shape and go, okay, here's my 1, here's my 4, here's my 5, here's my 1, here's my 1, here's my 4, here's my 5, here's my 1. And then you can play around those major chord shapes just out on those 3 strings. Like I'll do stuff like this and go, just try to use your ear to connect these chord tones. Yeah. And so that's really what it is to me. And maybe just take this and go A, there's my D right there. So to go from A to D, I'm just adding that. So that E note just stays there. So we're literally just changing that. So I might go. Okay, now I went up to there, but you know what I mean? So just taking simple melodies. Like I did put in a little flat 7 there, but that's okay. So, or take this, It's not the most like earth-shatteringly funky, groovy,
but that's super important
music in the world. But it's super important.
Yeah, one thing that I tell a lot of students is, give yourself some limitations when you're practicing. Right. If you're working on something, like try to limit. If you're working through the case shapes or you're working through pentatonic scale patterns or whatever, limit yourself to like, okay, I'm going to play a blues in A, and I'm just going to stick in this like 4 or 5 fret region here, and see if you can make all the changes and play as a nice musical solo and visualize like, oh, there's the third of that next chord or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And really, spend some time really drilling that area before because a lot of guys, and I'm sure you see this too, they'll play a solo and they kind of like fly all over the place. Like when a chord change comes, they go down to a place where they're comfortable with it.
Right, totally.
And you want to be comfortable with that stuff everywhere, so you have freedom. You have options. Totally. You can go, if I hear like the line climbing up the neck and I want to, I can do that. If I want to just hang out somewhere and play some, I can do that, and you're not limited by any lack of knowledge of the fretboard.
Totally, and it's beautiful. It's a very comforting thing to have that freedom,
Yeah, and you just slowly build on it.
Building on it.
We're always working on it. Like I'm always working on
even
the fundamental stuff. I'm always working on it.
Constantly mapping stuff out. And I know we're gonna run here in just a minute. The train's going by. If you live in East Nashville, that costs extra to have the train closer to your house, because it's so ironic and lonesome and desperate and hip, right?
Desperate and hip.
Transient. Okay, so anyway, but I wanted to mention too, make sure little sales pitch here, make sure and check out all Jack's stuff, Instagram and YouTube, and that's Jack Ruch, and that's R-U-C-H. Every time, I've known him for 5 years, and every time I see him, I ask him how to pronounce his last name. It's Ruch, right?
Yeah, it's Ruch.
It's Ruch. It's R-U-C-H. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, my name's Guthrie Trapp. The first P is silent, and Trapp. Anyway, so I wanted to say a couple things. Check out his stuff. Check out the links below for if you want to do the deep dive in any of these lessons. Check out Artist Works. You've heard me say that a million times. Private Skype and Zoom master classes, because you get a video, and this is stuff you can check out for a long time to come. I'm looking at this pedal right here. This is a great pedal too. Check out this Dispatch Master by Earthquake Devices. This is a really fun pedal. It's reverb and delay in the same pedal. And I just got this pedal yesterday. I will say this, I never buy stuff. You've never seen me do this before, but this is a tremulator by Demeter Amplification. And if you love all those Rycooter sounds that he gets and some of that stuff, I never thought I'd get excited about a tremolo. I always thought they kind of all just sounded cool and the same. This pedal is incredible. there's got to be some kind of preamp thing going on here because it really does sound good. And I will, while we're sitting here, I will one more time. I'm going to show you. And like I said, friends, I don't ever do this. You know I'm real low tech over here. That's not the pedal I wanted to show you. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab it because it's sitting right here, I think. Sorry, guys. Let's see if we can find it here. Jack, I want you to try this thing at some point and let me know what you think too. But I don't say this very often, but I do have the Guthrie Trapp signature model overdrive that I would love for you guys to try. This is what it looks like. This is a new one, but it's a great little overdrive pedal, and so that's it.
Nice.
So I'll get Jack to come over one day and we'll plug all these pedals in and you can see what they sound like. But anyway, check that out, J Rocket Audio GTO. And then guys, I think we're gonna probably wrap it up here for today. Cool. The sun's finally out. We've survived the tropical storm here, and luckily all of our buddies down in New Orleans didn't get hurt too bad, and so you know it's all good, man. We're September 1st today, so we're saying goodbye to the brutally hot weather and welcoming the cool. So you guys stay good out there, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks for being here, Jack.
Thanks for having me,
man.
And just so you know, I've stolen 1 million licks from this guy. All of them. I've stolen them all.
I stole them all too from somebody. And man, this guy just beautiful playing. And let's play a little like maybe just like another little shuffle or something. We'll shuffle these guys on out of here. If I knew how to fade out the video, I would fade out, but that's not gonna happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
We'll just go to, you wanna play in C?
I love C.
Let's go to C. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, man. All right.
All right.
Safe.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. See you soon. All right. That was pretty good for a trial.